The reviews are in, and Stranger Things Season 3 is getting high marks across the board for 80s nostalgia, creepy special effects, and for its feminist storylines and LGBTQ+ representation. However, some critics found the season too authentically 80s for today's progressive culture. Here to chat about the hits and misses of Stranger Things is the host of In Case You Missed It by HuffPost, Heather Gardner.
You cleaned it up?
Back.
I see.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure it was nice and clean for you.
Aw, thank you so
Miss
much.
Heather.
Yes, Miss Heather has returned.
Embrace it. She's embracing it. Embracing it.
Wow, I did not expect that response.
We
I
love
know,
you here.
you're popular.
Aw, thanks.
But let's talk about Stranger Things, another thing we love. Everybody watches this show. But what were some of the issues? What were the female storylines that people are sort of talking
Okay,
about?
well, first of all, I do want to say that I was one of those 40 million people who watched it, binge watched it the first 24 hours. What was it, 18 million people?
Yeah.
who did that?
Yeah.
I was hungover the day after 4th of July, so I just spent the entire day watching Stranger
America.
Things, and I don't even regret it at all. Yes, America. And I really did think that this was one of the better seasons. I agree with you, what you said the other day. First season is the best, nothing can touch it.
Right.
But this one was definitely the second best in my opinion. I
Absolutely.
really did think they did a good job. But we do have some critics. We have some very picky critics who think that the treatment of women was not necessarily the best. Although I will say, like, they updated the storylines quite a bit.
Yeah, no, and actually, I mean, we will get to the criticism, but to be fair, this season, they did expand some of the female characters, especially we'll talk about Robin later, but with Max and Eleven.
Yes.
Instead of doing the whole, they hate each other, girls, they're like, no, let's be best friends, screw the boys, and be, like, comrades, best friends. I love that what they did with that and really kind of not falling into traditional story tropes.
And you know,
like
to the Duffer Brothers' credit here in Stranger Things in general, they have had this criticism for the first 2 seasons, and they really did, I thought, try to make upgrades, because you're right. In the first 2 seasons, they were pitted against each other, or I guess the last season, because Max wasn't in the first. But then Eleven was also just very dependent on the boys, and then her father figure, Sheriff Hopper. And then in this season, she really found her independence not only from her boyfriend, but also with her own, like, powers and stuff. And Joyce, who was reduced to the hysterical mother figure the entire first 2 seasons, she got to go out on her own adventure, had a much more in-depth storyline in that regard. And then also we had Nancy, who again was a love triangle. She was kind of just there to have, you know, competition between the men. And then she got to have her own storyline as well this season.
So it sounds like there's been progress, but we're still having issues?
Yes, and one of the biggest issues we had was with Evan Rachel Wood, who was on another one of my favorite shows, HBO's Westworld. I want to read her tweet verbatim because it really sparked a lot of debate on this. You should never date a guy like a cop from the Stranger Things. Especially extreme jealousy and violent rages are not flattering or sexy like TV would have you believe.
I have to push back on this a little bit because I think, one, hello, have you watched Westworld? People getting fucked up on that show. But no, I think, you know, Hopper is a very interesting character, and I totally get where she's coming from, but, like, you know, his past is like his wife died brutally, his daughter died, he was a drunk, he's lives alone in his cabin. So we've been watching kind of his redemption, and yes, he's a violent character. He mows down Russians without any sort of remorse in this season. But I also think that we see some of the softer sides when him trying to ask Joyce out on a date, how he feels about Eleven. That I feel like this kind of simplifies that character. It simplifies the way the Duffer Brothers have moved these characters that started in traditional 80s story tropes, like the hot guy to the nerdy girl, whatever, and moved them all beyond that now in their 3rd season. So I don't know, I didn't think she's a fan of the show. And
I will say when I was watching it, because I love Hopper, I love the show so much. Again, one of those 40 million people who watched it right away. And I did have that thought silently before I read her tweet. I was like, when did he become such an ass? Because he was like very aggressive to Joyce specifically. Yeah, he goes in and beats up the mayor and stuff, and that's like really fun. But he also like yelled at her the entire season, and I really did think that.
well, she did stand them up on a date.
That is true, but he didn't have to go violently rage. I mean, that does not constitute.
She deserved it.
No, she did it. No, she did it.
She did it.
No, she did it. You know, I applaud Stranger Things for the female characters and the power they've shown, but I just thought this was a little simplifying his character a little too much.
Yeah, personally, I haven't liked the way his character's been developed. I feel like it's kind of ruined a little bit.
I thought the same exact thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's hard because when you're watching a TV show, it's like you want them to write, like, you know, responsible characters, but they're also, you still have to highlight that there are trash people in this universe.
Right.
So it's kind of like when you write a show with no trash people, you're like not being realistic, and it's more fantasy than like Game of Thrones and having dragons. So I do like having, you know, problematic characters who are called out and treated he did, like, you know, like making sure that you understand, like, no, you shouldn't be like attracted to a man who yells at you.
And I think that was my issue too with it. It wasn't just that he was so mean to her, is that they set it up for them to be like sexually attracted to each other at the end, which kind of really plays into that stereotype, which we're telling people now with the Me Too movement, like when boys hit you, when boys yell at you, when boys are mean to you, it doesn't mean that they like you.
Well, I agree on that. Someone should have snapped him back and been like, you're fat and you're gross. Like, there's a little more like that. But that I agree upon. But that's also just his character is like, he's not a perfect guy. He's far from perfect. He just plays the cop who kind of saves the day. But I agree with you. There probably should have been more pushback on his behavior.
And like I said, I really did think that they upgraded the storylines for the women, especially in this season so much. And then, of course, we have the LGBTQ plus representation as well, which was, I mean, it was another criticism that they had the first 2 seasons. They had no characters in that realm. And then they had a huge one coming out with Robin this time. So it was really good.
And she is the best character. Robin is
good.
awesome. Like, from the start, you feel like, oh, she's gonna be really cool. She's really funny. And then the way it turns out, that scene in the bathroom.
It was my favorite.
Well, sorry to spoil it when she comes out to Steve, because Steve's like, you know, I like this girl, like, who sat in my, it's the whole like 80s, like, she sat in my class and noticed her. She's like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And it's like, she's like, I'm gay. And I was like, that is so awesome. And also it shows like they're still buds, they're best friends, and I love that too.
I really did love how it was, like I said, it was one of the most beautiful scenes of the whole series, but also just a coming out scene in general. It had the right amount of heart, the right amount of humor, and it felt very normal for it to coming out to a friend who was just, by the way, like he was shot down. Like, he's vulnerable in that moment, and she is too, for a completely different reason. He's just like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I really did appreciate it.
Yeah.
And also there's been talk though, because with Will's character, and I've said this before. I think in the original, one of the original drafts of the pilot, that Will was explicitly labeled a gay character, but they're 10 years old, so they don't need to address that. But many people watched the show and said he is, and the actor I think he said a response being like, it's up to your interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't explicitly said whether he is or not, but they did have one moment where they alluded to, like, he doesn't like girls, but it may just be because he hasn't hit that level of puberty yet. And that's what the actor Noah Schnapp said about open to interpretation. But the criticism here is because, yes, they are having these representation, but they're still in the closet. Will is still in the closet. Robin is still in the closet to everyone else.
From a 10-year-old kid,
Right.
you don't even know at that point.
Right.
Right.
So
Well,
much
no, they're just
pressure,
saying. Well, they're saying specifically for Robin too that she only came out to her one close friend, but to the rest of the group she didn't
Because
come.
that's real fucking life.
and
And I think people
talking
are
about.
still like, I still know people who are in their 40s who are in the closet.
Right.
It's not
Well, no,
easy
my
to just
grandma,
come
she knows,
out.
but-
Like,
Well, and this is the big issue here. It's like, where do we draw that line then? Because you alluded to it too. It's like, it feels real. It feels realer to have problematic characters, and it feels real, especially in the 80s for people to be
exactly.
in the
It's
closet.
1985. People need to remember what is happening right now. It is not cool to be gay yet. It is.
It's still not cool to be gay in a lot of places.
It's still mostly not cool. We're still fighting for rights, and we're still we know with our government still trying to take away our rights. But like that's the thing also, like we're in the 80s still. It's really hard to come out. So I did not have that same reaction.
I didn't either. I mean, I'm one of those people who definitely, shocker, I'm progressive. No, but I mean, like, I'm one of those people who really does appreciate, though, the authenticity of shows. And that's one of the reasons why Stranger Things is so successful, and it was out of the gate, because it felt so 80s, right? Yeah. So I really do think that people who are complaining about these kind of issues are kind of missing the point of nostalgia, and kind of missing, of course, the idea of why we like it so much. But, you know, the Duffer Brothers and any show, this is by far and large not the only show who has dealt with, you know, dealing with time periods for today's audience. Where do they draw the line?
But it's always the brothers who write it.
The
brothers, the D's, the David and Dov, whatever.
But
I
you
just
know,
think
like,
it's interesting to talk
if
about.
they had written Will's character to be super out, or any character to be like completely out and confident, and everyone was in the town was chill with it, they would also get criticized for that, because that's not realistic, and then it wouldn't really pay tribute to, like, you know, everything that the LGBTQI community has gone through. Like, we had to live in fear.
But, and also, this takes place in a made-up town, Indiana.
Yeah.
Indiana. You know, used to be governor of Indiana, Mike Pence. So, and that was in 2011 or something, or 15.
That
So
might be the scariest part of Stranger Things. Is that Mike Pence might live in this.
I know exactly. That's season 4. He's the Demigorgon. It's Mike Pence.
Write that down.
Mike Pence is responsible for the upside down.
He
This all
really
makes
is.
sense.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. Mike Pence is worse than any of those little rats exploding.
Oh,
that's so nasty.
Get away from me! Get away!
that's it. It's just like that's all you see. Just walk out of the upside down gate. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah. Oh no.
But I think all of this talk just goes to show how big Stranger Things is. That people care this much about it, which means it's probably.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I think the biggest takeaway here is that they took the criticism. There was a lot of fair criticism, especially with women, and of course having no representation in that community for the LGBT community, and the fact that they upgraded and were striving to make something different. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do in the next season.
Oh, I can't wait! Can't wait to be hungover again.
Heather, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you can catch In Case You Missed It by HuffPost on HuffPost.com and Yahoo's Roku channel.